Hello, everyone. I'm Burlington Mayor Mary Ann Mead Ward, and welcome to another edition of Burlington Matters, where we assemble local community issues and leaders to talk about what is on your mind. So we have another great panel for you today, two women that I'm very excited for you to meet and hear from, especially now during the pandemic, which has been so tough and disproportionately has affected women. We're going to talk about that on the show. And just before we get to the introductions of our esteemed guests, just a little bit of background on that. This is how it has disproportionately affected women. We know that more women work, for example, in frontline essential jobs, nurses, grocery clerks, teachers, retail, service industries, and the added workload for women has fallen on mothers to look after the house, but also layering in homeschooling when schools have had to close for extended periods of time. Many women have had to move their office indoors because of COVID restrictions, as many of us have. And so there's a lot of fatigue and frustration that is disproportionately affecting the women in our community. So I've invited two Burlington women here today who are senior leaders in their organizations, as well as working moms. I don't know how you do it already, to school-age children. And will be joining me for a discussion about how they are using supports available that they need to stay healthy in body, in mind, and how to continue to deliver results for very demanding professions while having to learn how to do it all in a completely different way. It was kind of like a little explosion was set off in our universe, and you've all picked up the pieces. You both have picked up the pieces extremely well, and we're going to talk about that. And I know it's not been easy, and we can talk about that too. And I know there are lots of women out there who are watching this show who will be facing the same challenges. So I hope you get a couple of things out of today's broadcast. First, some empathy and camaraderie for your situation, knowing that you're not the only one. Second, maybe some tips from our guests around how they're able to do it, and really just learn from each other as we do as women. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our two guests. We have Jennifer Barber. Wave, Jennifer, so they can see your name on the screen, but Jennifer is the Chief Financial Officer at Torstar. And we have Rebecca Leach, who is the County Manager for App Dynamics and Cisco. So I'm sure both of you pre-pandemic, if we can all remember what that used to be like, used to have a good deal of separation between your office and your home life. And that's been completely removed for all of us. I can tell you, I don't move much from this 4 feet square little box on my couch here. I can see the world go by, but I'm here. So there's really no separation. And I want to ask both of you, maybe I'll come to you first. Rebecca, what's the biggest way your life has changed since the pandemic began? Go ahead.
Sure, and lovely to be here. Thank you. Being part of Cisco and App Dynamics, it's a technology company. So I think my answer may be a little different from Jennifer's in the sense that I've had the privilege to work from home for many, many years. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got an office downtown Toronto, and I would hop on the GO train 2-3 times a week and head down there or drive down amidst all the traffic and the chaos. But I will say for the most part, it's not been a disruptive change for me. I've had the opportunity to work from home for many years, and it's germane for us. It's in our DNA, right? This is what we do. We collaborate and connect others. And so I would say, I'm enjoying, and on the positive note, and I recognize there's a lot of negatives around, obviously, the pandemic and the pain and hurt it's caused and the economic instability, et cetera. But I will say I am enjoying my 12-foot commute from from my bedroom to my office. For me, I think the bigger change is as we manage through this hybrid workplace, right, where we have customers and partners in our teams who are connecting from physical offices in some situations still, and in most cases are connecting from their home office, which could be, by the way, their kitchen, it could be their bedroom, it could be, somewhere in a hallway, as we've all seen. I've seen the inside of more homes than I've ever seen in my life in the last year or so. But certainly, I think what's more important is is staying connected, right? To your point, there's been so much change. And for me, as a leader and as a mother, as a friend, it's really been about understanding that people are going to be connecting with us through videos, right? And we're used to seeing people in squares as opposed to people in person. And it's really how we make those connections continue to be meaningful. In fact, be more meaningful, because it's a very different dynamic over, in terms of a digital touch as it is in terms of a personal touch. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer. She may have a different experience.
For sure. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I would say I probably did have a very different experience. I went away on vacation and came back to my home office where I was up until probably a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to come back sort of one day a week here, if at all possible. And there's really nobody here, but it's really just meant to create a little bit of normalcy and hopefully that, it's a precursor of what's to come. I don't know that we will ever go back to the way we were. So we were probably a 5-day a week in the office kind of company for the most part. And I think that has probably changed dramatically and probably for the better. There's probably some benefits to that, I agree with you, Rebecca, like the commute is much better when it's all within the same house and there's, time to do things that you didn't have time to do before. But then I do miss that separation. Most particularly, I feel I had the commute time on the way home, and that was a decompression time. Mm-hmm. When your day has been back to back to back to back and you're spinning and your mind's spinning and you really almost can't even formulate a sentence. And you had some time in between, whether it's in the drive or it's on the train, you had some time to decompress and think about what comes next. And now it's, you just leave the room and you're in it. And, everybody's been online all day and everybody's tired and everybody's minds are frazzled. And now you have to be a part of that and you have to find a way to probably control it a little bit, which probably gets at, there isn't those other things that people had in their lives don't necessarily exist in this format anymore. And I find that's a big thing, particularly for our family.
Yeah, I want to add on that. That really resonates. And my role as mayor has always been a little bit remote, right? You're kind of working 24/7. It's always been like that. It was like that when I was a counselor. And so you do a lot of work from home anyway. But what I've discovered, there's an irony that I'm home more and I see my family more, like I see them, but I interact with them less. Because I'm always sitting on this couch looking. So I wave at them, hello, we all know that we're here. And so that was something I didn't expect. I thought, if I'm home more, and ironically, when I was out in the office or going out to community events, I found ways to actually build in family time. I had more family time when I was out more. And that was a surprising discovery for me through the pandemic. And I think the other piece of it, and I'm interested in what you've learned in your corporate experience, one of the resistance of employers to allowing people pre-pandemic to work at home is that we're all going to slack off, right? We're all going to, not get the job done. And if there wasn't somebody watching us, there was this huge worry. And what we've discovered, I work 12, 14-hour days in front of a computer almost every day. That wasn't my schedule prior. I had breaks built in there, but when you have no commute, when you have a Zoom commute, which is 30 seconds between meetings, it's 8 a.m. till 6 o'clock at night, and then you pick up again at 7 o'clock, and that's just not sustainable. But it is one of those things, and my husband has been working from home throughout the pandemic. They probably will not go back to an office, at least not with any regularity. And they've discovered they get way more work out of us folks when we're at home, right? So I'm interested to hear if that's been your experience in the corporate environment too, and if the minds are changing. You kind of touched on it, that probably the universe isn't going to go back to Monday to Friday commute time. Rebecca, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to a broadcast just this morning, actually. McKinsey was saying that they estimate that at least 30% of the workforce will not return to work. And, it started off back in last March. People were saying, oh, maybe 5% won't go back. And then it kind of was 15 in the summer, and now we're at 30. And I bet you it's going to be a lot more than that. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, people used to talk about the work-life balance, and those of us who didn't have it would say, what's that exactly? And then it kind of became like work-life blend, right? And now it's just one big blender. I think it's very fluid, right? And you're absolutely bang on. We work and live in the same place right now. And as Jen said, there's no kind of, you know, separation, right? You walk out of your office and, you know, for me, it's like my 10-year-old son is standing in the hallway, Mom, you know, da-da. And so you kind of have to make that transition from being, you know, in the work environment and focused on certain things to kind of transitioning very quickly into being a mother or a wife or a daughter or whatever the case may be. And that's hard because, you know, as Jen said, and I was absolutely relating to that, I used to have my GO train ride home or my ride home on the QEW from downtown Toronto as my decompression time, right? Make a couple of calls. You know, if I was on the GO train, I might sort of read the last couple of emails, maybe finish off that PowerPoint so that when I got home, I was fresh and I was ready. And that, you know, that lack of delineation now between work and home life it took some getting used to. And I will say, you know, I think you have to be really intentional about it, right? You made a good point about companies getting much more productivity from us than they did in the past, and you're bang on, absolutely. I think what's really important is taking time for yourself. So, you know, one of the things that I've tried to do is I've tried to take some of the household responsibilities that I might just push to the weekend normally and do them during the week. I take time in the day to go stretch because I could literally sit for 10, 12 hours straight. As you said on your couch, I sit on an exercise ball so that at least I'm sort of moving a little bit. But taking time, I downloaded the Peloton app. You know, I'll take off in the middle of the day and just take 30 minutes and do some stretching. Or one of the cool things I've started doing with my leaders is I'll do one-on-ones on a walk. So listen, we don't need to see each other every single week. You know, we're going to touch base multiple times during the week. I throw my headset on and off I go around the block and we'll do a walking one-on-one so that at least we're both out there and we're getting a little bit of exercise, you know, getting some fresh air. Maybe you get a bit of a different thought perspective if you're out in the open versus in the same environment. So I found that, you know, a few little things like that have helped, just kind of changing it up a little bit in terms of monotony, because it can be a lot just being in one place all the time and balancing it all.
I like that idea. So when you're walking, are they walking in their own neighborhood?
Yes.
So this is still a virgin. That's really neat. That's a neat idea. Jennifer, jump in here.
I'd agree with you. Like, I think you just trying to keep some separation and trying to have some element of what kept you sane is really important in this. And I think, you know, I'll be quite honest, I think I did a better job of it earlier in the pandemic than I'm doing now. I think as this has gone on, I think you fall back into bad habits. I think different emergencies come up, work gets busy, lives get busy. And even actually as lives, as we try to return to normal in some form, it's in a way that you're not necessarily getting, you don't have all the structure in place that you did before. So for example, you know, both my kids started hockey 1 or 2 days a week. Well, now hockey 1 or 2 days a week is like a huge deal because there's nothing else going on. And you have all these other things you need to think about with 1 or 2 days a week at school, at hockey. And now whatever you were doing in that time frame has to get pushed to some other time. And so I think we were better at it when there was less going on. And then we were better at it when it was frantic and everybody was used to it. And I think when you're in that, I'll call it the messy middle, you're less prepared for it. I think as a family, we were less prepared for this messy middle. You know, and there's days now where people are like, well, I have this, and people are surprised by it. And you're like, why are we surprised? There should be no surprises. We know what the calendar looks like, but we're getting broadsided. We are seeing a lot of being broadsided lately. You know, going out for walks in the middle of the day. I did at one point, you know, before the weather turned, I would run in the middle of the afternoon. I would try and take the time during the daylight to run in the afternoon. And then, you know, I can always put that extra time in at night if it needs doing. I will say I miss the gym. I really, really miss the gym. I really can't wait for the gym to open again. That will be one thing that I will head straight back to as soon as it's safe.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, all of what you just said. And, you know, to try and find that space in your house. And there's other implications to it. And, when people are reaching out to you and you choose to check your phone at home, that's one thing. But the fact that you're always at home now, it means you've invited the entire community, you've invited your workspace, they are now in your space. So that mental break between work and home, and even having that commute break to make that distinction very clear, there is no separation. And so it feels like, sometimes it feels like I've got all of Burlington in my living room with me, talking about, various aspects of the pandemic, and you try in different ways to get that separation. I wanted to talk about how you lead your teams, and maybe I'll start with you, Jennifer, on this, how you've adapted your style. And Rebecca touched on this with the walk around the block. I love that idea. But in terms of, how you lead your team, how you build your team, and not just in work-related matters, but how you keep that morale and that energy. When you were talking about that messy middle and how it might be harder now, I think I absolutely agree. And part of what I find hard is we now know what we're in for, right? And it's like this sense of dread. Oh no, please don't close the schools again, because we know exactly what that looks like. Or, oh no, we're heading into an extended lockdown. Like we now know in a way that we didn't early in the pandemic. And there's something about not knowing what you're in for and just kind of powering down and getting through it is there's a way to get through it that is different when you know exactly what awaits you and how hard it might be. You can do it. You've done it. We've all done it. So we can take some solace from the fact that we got through it once. We can get through it again. But there's no sugarcoating this anymore. And that's probably part of what makes it hard. Go ahead, Jennifer. Yeah.
I guess that, sorry, the lack of knowing how long it's going to last. I think that, we know if a lockdown happens again, we know what to do, we know what to expect, but we don't know how long it's going to last. And this has been a long time in emergency mode. Like we're coming up on a year in emergency mode, longer for some folks. And so it's just a long time to be in that under pressure mode. And you have to find a way to kind of take the temperature down a little bit. I'd say with our teams, the one thing I'd say is I've never been so glad for the relationships we had heading into this. I don't think we understood how close we were. And there was a lot of informal communication in our team before. So, there was a lot of time in the office at various different offices, lots of all these things that went on in events, lots of informal time. And now everything is very structured. I will call you at 1:30. I will talk to you at 2. It's very structured. And the reality is that people's lives aren't that structured. Kids don't run in and say, oh, I'll talk to you at 2:05. When something happens, they're coming screaming through your office door, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to stop and deal with it. I think as parents, we try to all understand that those things go on in people's homes and try and be cognizant of those things. And, to some degree, they're a bit of sometimes comic relief, and you hope for that, to have that with your teams, but it's difficult. I like the idea that Rebecca had about going on a walk and talking while you're on a walk, because I think it's really challenging. And I think to understand the person on the other end of the phone and what they're going through and what they might be going through. I've got a range of team members, ones with many kids and many activities, and the house is insane most of the time, to people who are very isolated and all alone. And that's the real difference in their life experience and, what they've experienced through this pandemic. But you have to understand both ends of that spectrum and be able to accommodate both. And I think that's what we've tried to do.
Absolutely. Rebecca, anything you want to add in terms of how your leadership style has changed? Any
Sure. Yeah, I think, I've really had to pivot and really focus on mental wellness and really try and pick up on cues from the teams. As Jen said, there's a lot of folks that are on their own and they're feeling very isolated. There's other folks that are not on their own and wish they were. So I think it's about navigating, the pressures of family and children and all the dynamics of, I tell you, my son burst into my office on a number of different occasions to ask me, how to work Google or whatever. And by the way, he was not wearing pants because, you can be in your pajamas or even in your underwear when you're doing online school, but my team does not need to see that. So there's been some hilarity right through the process. And but I think in terms of my leadership style, it's really about focusing on mental wellness on the team, kind of, trying to be as inclusive as possible. And just doing some fun things like, Jen said it so well. We're very purposeful, right? Like 2:05, 2:30, 3:00, everything's intentional. So what I've been trying to do is inject some fun. So we do things like virtual happy hours, and we're doing a trivia night. I'm pulling the whole country together tomorrow night, and we're doing a trivia night online. So we'll have the opportunity to, play a game together, obviously virtually, but bringing the teams together on matters that aren't just about business, right? Social, economic, what's going on in the schools, what's happening, and having those open conversations that you would have at the coffee counter at the office, which you're not having. So being intentional about that, I think, is definitely how I've pivoted.
That's awesome. We did do the in my team the virtual happy hour, and that was a big hit. I had a bunch of questions, homework, so it was fun homework. But like, what was your favorite band when you were 18, and such like that. It was actually quite fun for us to do it, and we're planning to do that again more often because it kind of fell off the radar, and then there was hope that we would be back together again, and then we're not, and then all of a sudden 4 months goes by and you haven't done one of those things. It's amazing how well none of us know what day it is, right, until we check our calendar. They all kind of blend. You touched on this earlier, Jennifer, about kids in hockey and competitive sports, and I know that has also been really hit with closures and people, especially our young people, really missing that. How has your family coped with the double edge, the busyness that you talked about, and the loss of that, or trying to add it back when the regulations allowed us to?
Well, I think the fact that it's back in some form right now, we couldn't be happier. It's the double-edged sword is the season's over and we're heading into another summer, which is great. The last couple of weeks that things have been opened are like a blessing in disguise, because everybody realizes why they do it and why they love it. And even as parents, I think we were very much hockey parents. Our time with our children was the time in the car, and it was the time at the practice, and it was the time at the game, and that was our family time. And that was something to have in common. And when you take that away, then you lose the structure of when family time is. Like you said, work can go all day and all night now, and there is no separation, and people can get you because they know where to get you. And emergencies don't always come up in daytime hours. So I think that the lack of that structure is what we really missed, and it's nice to actually have it back a little bit, and to be able to see them happy and watch them flourish a little and blow off a little steam, are all those things that parents love to see. And I think we just as a family needed to learn that you do need to schedule time as a family when you don't otherwise have anything else. That, to us, we thought you never thought of it as scheduled family time, but that's in fact what it was.
Yeah, it was one of the things I had to start to do when I first started in elected office as a counselor for 8 years, and then as mayor, is I had to book appointments with my family. And the irony, and I touched on this earlier, is that when all of a sudden we were home all the time, I got out of the habit of booking those appointments, so they don't happen, right?
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say that. And so, I'm really looking forward, obviously, to, we're taping just before Easter break, and having a couple of days off with nothing. I'm going to put my phone down, to have like unstructured, unscheduled time to reintroduce myself to my family who know what I look like, but forget who I actually am. Rebecca, what about you? Are your kids in sports? Are they in extracurricular activities that they're missing or getting back into?
We're on the opposite end of Jen. So while she's coming out of hockey, we're just going into to baseball. So my son is a Burlington Bull, and which is the rep baseball team here in Burlington, and he's incredibly excited to be getting back into it. We had a winter of Fortnite, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but yes, that was definitely one of the extracurricular things that happened in my household. But yeah, it's nice to get the kids outside again and just get them exercising and breathing the fresh air and even just through the winter training, right? Just having them go somewhere and do something that was out of the house and social, right? Because we spent so many months locked away without school being in session as well. It's nice just to have the kids socializing again. It's so incredibly important. So yeah, very, very excited about this upcoming season. Fingers crossed that we get it.
Absolutely. And, one of the realizations is that, yes, there's a health pandemic, but there's a parallel mental health pandemic that is happening, that has been growing and is getting worse because of the prolonged, Jennifer, you touched earlier that we're in this a year. We just passed in the city of Burlington, March 21 was our 1-year anniversary of the declaration of the state of emergency, and here we still are. And I can't say with any confidence about when that will be lifted, because it depends on vaccinations, it depends on people getting them, it depends on obviously supply and reaching that critical mass. And even after that, there may be still some need for physical distancing, for masking. So this is going to be with us for a long time, and that mental health pandemic is really going to well, we need to address it now, but that's growing daily, as well as an economic one. And we've touched on the impact on women. It's been described as a she-cession. We know that women are key to the recovery, so we call that our she-covery. And the two of you are part of that, right? And so happy to have you on the show. Any 30 seconds final words from either that you want to leave with our community? I'll start with you, Rebecca, and then Jennifer, go ahead.
Sure. No, thank you. I think, the key to surviving this is just, as we've seen on billboards and signs everywhere, is just be kind, be patient, and just connect, right? And I think it's really critical that we connect as human beings, whether it's digitally or in person at 6 feet. Let's just be kind and be safe, and we're all in this together. So
well said.
My thought. Thank you.
I'd agree with Rebecca. I mean, the reality is nobody knows what another human being is going through this. Everybody's experience in this, even though we're doing it together, is very different. And we all have individual pressures in our lives, and understanding where each other's coming from, rather than being accusatory or difficult, is the way we're going to get through this. So I think that's a big part of, be kind and try and understand what other people's experiences might be.
Well said. Well, we are at the end of our show. I want to say a huge thank you to Jennifer Barber, Chief Financial Officer as Torstar, Rebecca Leach, the County Manager for App Dynamics and Cisco. Thank you for joining me and for sharing so openly with our viewers of Burlington Matters. I'm Marianne Mead Ward, signing off for another episode. Be safe, be kind.